Surprising fact here in Göbekli Tepe is that we have monumental architecture so early in the history of mankind. So we didn't expect it to have it so early.
For decades, one big question has bothered archaeologists more than any other. How did people who supposedly had no metal tools, no wheels, no written language, and who had not even invented farming yet, manage to carve, move, and stand up T-shaped limestone pillars weighing up to 50 tons with perfect math?
I don't think anybody knows how they did it, how they lifted those stones, how they brought them up to that level. I think we're looking, again, at a lost technology. And it was this ancient apocalypse, 12,800 years ago, that wiped that from the human memory banks.
The site sits on a hilltop near the city of Sanliurfa in southeastern Turkey. When a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt began digging there in 1995, he uncovered something impossible, something that basically should not exist. It was a massive temple complex built around 9600 BC, that is 11,600 years ago. To put that massive number in perspective, Stonehenge was built around 3000 BC. The Egyptian pyramids date to around 2500 BC. Göbekli Tepe is older than them by more than 6,000 years. It was built before pottery, before the wheel, before metalworking, and before farming itself. According to every model of human growth we had, this was impossible. The site consists of at least 20 circular circles, each featuring massive T-shaped pillars arranged in rings. These are not rough stone slabs. They are perfectly carved giant stones, standing up to 18 feet tall and weighing between 10 and 50 tons each. They are decorated with complex carvings of lions, foxes, scorpions, vultures, and snakes. Some pillars have arms carved into their sides, hands meeting at the front, suggesting they represent strange human figures. The official story has always gone like this. Wandering hunters, maybe driven by religion, came together now and then to build this temple. They used stone tools to carve the pillars from the ground. They somehow dragged them up the hill, stood them up, and then, for reasons nobody knows, they buried the whole place on purpose around 8000 BC, keeping it perfect for us to find. But here is what engineers noticed right away. Even with modern machines, moving and standing up a 50-ton carved pillar would be a huge job. Without cranes, without metal tools, and without even carts with wheels, it seems physically impossible. So, when new findings came out in 2025 claiming to show how these pillars were made, the world of history held its breath. The big break came from a team of researchers who did the most complete check yet of the limestone quarries around Göbekli Tepe. Using ground-penetrating radar and high-resolution three-dimensional laser scanning, they created a complete digital copy of the entire site, capturing every groove, every tool mark, every bump on the surface, down to a fraction of an inch. They found over 350 places where stone was cut within a radius of a little over a mile from the main temple. But what they found in these quarries goes against almost everything we thought we knew. At several sites, they discovered T-shaped pillars that were only halfway cut out, still attached to the ground. These were ancient projects frozen in time. One pillar remains about 70% free from the rock around it. It lies on its side and weighs about 65 tons. That would make it the heaviest pillar yet found at Göbekli Tepe. It was never finished, never moved, just sitting there as a sign of a dream that was too big for them. This is where the computer analysis changed everything. The researchers fed every scan, every image, and every measurement into advanced computer programs trained to see patterns in stonework. What the computer saw sent shockwaves through the team. Under a microscope and three-dimensional surface scanning, the computer found at least 3 different ways the rock was carved. And here is where things get strange. The first way involved hard stone hammers used to pound the limestone. This is normal for that time period. Nothing weird there. But the second way shows something else entirely. Along the edges where pillars were being cut from the ground, the computer found proof of extremely precise straight cuts. We are talking about cuts measuring only a tiny fraction of an inch wide and going in perfectly straight lines for over 3 feet. The precision is crazy. The line barely wobbles at all over that distance. One of the lead researchers said that the straightness of these cuts beats what they would expect from stone tools used in a pounding or grinding motion. The straight lines suggest either a super-controlled way of working they do not understand, or a cutting method that leaves a different mark than predicted. The computer compared these marks to thousands of known tool marks from the Stone Age. It found no matches. 0. The cut patterns do not look like any documented Stone Age technology. But wait, because the third way might be the most confusing of all. The enhanced scanning revealed proof of thermal shock fracturing at multiple digging sites that people had missed before. The computer found scorch marks and heat-colored limestone right next to the cuts. These patterns were invisible to the naked eye but clear in the special analysis. Testing the chemistry of these areas showed heating temperatures between 750 and 1100 degrees Fahrenheit. That is hot enough to change the inside of the limestone. The theory is that the builders used fire to heat specific areas of the stone, then poured cold water on it fast. The heat shock would cause cracks along specific lines, allowing them to split the rock with control. Now, this sounds possible until you think about the control you need. Limestone cracks in random ways under heat shock unless you understand exactly how the rock is formed inside. You need to know how the layers sit, where the natural cracks are, and how different parts handle heat. Modern stoneworkers can do this because they have science reports, years of experience, and the chance to test things many times on scrap stone. We are being asked to believe that hunters at the very start of civilization developed the same deep knowledge without any practice. There are no practice pillars, no failed tries, and no proof of learning by making mistakes. The pillars at Göbekli Tepe look perfect in how they were made, as if the builders already knew exactly what they were doing from day one. The computer analysis also revealed something that makes the mystery even deeper. When the program mapped out the tool marks across different quarry sites to see which ones were older, it found something unexpected. Several quarries show proof of pillar cutting that seems to be older than the earliest confirmed temples at Göbekli Tepe by maybe hundreds of years. This is based on looking at how weather wears down the stone over time. The difference is big enough to ask serious questions. If pillars were being carved centuries before the temples were built, where were they kept? Were there older buildings that have not been found yet? Or is our dating of the site totally wrong? Here is where the computer made another disturbing discovery. The program looked at the quality and skill of the stonework across the site, measuring how straight the cuts were and how complex the art was. What it found goes against how we expect civilizations to grow. The oldest layers at Göbekli Tepe feature the biggest, most perfectly carved pillars with the best art. Later layers show smaller pillars with rougher carvings and less ambitious building. The quality gets worse over time. This is the opposite of what you would expect from a civilization learning and getting better at their job. It looks more like they inherited something and then lost the skill. Later, people reused, copied, and eventually buried a site they did not fully understand, trying to keep traditions alive that were slowly slipping away from them. Think about what this pattern means. In every other ancient site we have studied, we see improvement over time. The Egyptians built better pyramids as they learned. The Greeks built better temples with each generation. But at Göbekli Tepe, we see the exact opposite. The best work came first. It is as if someone hit a reset button on human knowledge, and everything that came after was just to try to remember what had been lost. But the computer's most shocking findings came when it started analyzing not just how the pillars were made, but how they could have possibly been moved and stood up. The new research shows where the pillars came from, but it does not explain how they moved them. The closest quarry is about 330 feet from the main site. The farthest one is over a mile away, with big hills between the start and finish. The researchers guessed that pillars were moved using wooden sleds, rollers, and ropes made from plants, with hundreds of people pulling. They talk about experiments where teams of modern people moved heavy stones short distances using these ways. But the computer analysis revealed a huge problem with this comparison that people had missed. Those experiment stones were rough blocks, not delicate carved pillars with complex art. The pillars at Göbekli Tepe have carvings that stick out 2 to 4 inches from the stone. These are animals and symbols that are very easy to break. The computer ran thousands of physics tests modeling different ways to move them. If you were dragging a pillar on its side over rocky ground, using ropes and wooden rollers, those carvings would be crushed. The computer model showed a 97% chance of big damage to the art under the suggested ways of moving them. Modern movers use special padding and lifting machines to move carved statues because the details are so fragile. Yet, the three-dimensional scans of Göbekli Tepe pillars show no proof of damage from moving. The details are perfect, as sharp and clear as the day they were carved 12,000 years ago. This suggests one of two possibilities that the computer flagged as important. Either the carvings were added after the pillars were stood up, which seems unlikely given that some carvings are on spots that would be super hard to reach once the pillar was standing, or the builders had a way to move them that was safe enough to protect the art, a method we have not found and cannot explain. The physics models generated for standing them up are even more troubling. A 50-ton T-shaped pillar is not a simple column. The T-shape creates an uneven weight, with the top bar maybe weighing 10 to 15 tons by itself. This makes it super wobbly during any lifting. The researchers suggest the pillars were slid into holes and then tipped up using ropes and dirt ramps. The computer tested this idea. To tip a 50-ton T-shaped pillar from flat to straight up using only ropes, you would need anchor points that can hold massive force. We are talking about force equal to the weight of several modern cars pulling at once. The computer model showed that natural anchors like trees or rocks would not be enough. You would need built anchor stones or weight systems. But there is no proof of such engineering at the site. No big anchor stones with rope grooves, no holes for counterweights, nothing. The lack of those necessary things makes the suggested method basically impossible. The computer also calculated how strong the ropes needed to be. The strongest natural plant ropes available to ancient people have breaking points that engineers have tested. To safely lift a 50-ton load, you would need either incredibly thick ropes, which become impossible to handle, or many ropes working together perfectly. The room for error would be tiny. If one rope snapped, the entire pillar could come crashing down, destroying months or years of work in a second. Yet, across 20 circles and over 200 pillars, there is no proof of failures. No broken pillars, no signs that they ever got it wrong. And here is something else the computer discovered that makes this even stranger. The program analyzed the holes in the ground where the pillars sat. The algorithms found that the holes were engineered with crazy precision. Each one was calculated to provide exactly the right balance for that specific pillar, accounting for the weight of that specific T-shape. This level of custom work suggests planning and math that should not exist in this time period. Then the computer turned its attention to something that had been hiding in plain sight. Something that would reveal the most disturbing truth of all. Using pattern recognition software trained on star data, the computer began analyzing the spaces between pillars, the way the circles faced, and the position of specific carved symbols. What it found was so precise, so mathematically beautiful, that at first the researchers thought it had to be a glitch in the code. The computer detected that the centers of the three oldest circles, when connected, form a perfect equilateral triangle. The sides of this triangle are even to within fractions of an inch over distances of hundreds of feet. To do this requires understanding complex shapes and the ability to measure long distances over rough ground with perfect accuracy. Remember, these people supposedly did not have rulers, compasses, or even a way to write down numbers. Yet, they were making layouts that would not be matched until the Greeks developed advanced math thousands of years later. But the computer went deeper. It analyzed the carved animal art, not for how good it looked, but for what it meant for the stars. Using its database of star positions through history and comparing them to the positions of specific carvings, the program found something that made the research team go silent. The animals carved on the pillars match constellations, not modern ones, but the stars as they would have appeared over 11,000 years ago in an ancient sky. The fox carvings line up with what we now call Sirius. The scorpion matches the constellation Scorpius. The vulture matches the area we know as Sagittarius. But here is what is truly scary. These are not just random star maps. The computer detected that they are showing a specific date, a specific moment in time, frozen in stone. When the program rebuilt the night sky for the exact positions shown by the carvings, they landed on a date roughly 12,800 years ago. That date matches almost exactly to the beginning of the Younger Dryas impact event. This was a time when evidence suggests a comet or pieces of it hit Earth, causing massive destruction around the world. There were massive floods, sudden climate shifts, the dying off of many animals, and the collapse of human groups across many lands. The famous Pillar 43, known as the Vulture Stone, shows a scene that researchers have argued about for years. It shows a vulture floating above a headless human figure, surrounded by other animals and symbols. The astronomical analysis reveals this is not a myth or church art. It is a history book, a permanent sign carved in stone documenting the moment the sky fell, when something from space brought ruin to the world. But the computer found something even more disturbing in the pattern of symbols. Using machine learning trained on time cycles, the program detected that the carvings do not just record a single event. They hide a warning about repeating cycles. The arrangement of certain symbols and the math between pillars points to an understanding that these bad events follow a pattern. The computer calculated that the spacing corresponds to the wobble of the Earth's axis, a cycle that takes almost 26,000 years. This is star knowledge that was not supposed to exist until ancient Greek scientists wrote it down thousands of years later. But here it is coded in stone at Göbekli Tepe, suggesting that the builders understood not just that disaster had struck, but that it would strike again, following a pattern as predictable as the seasons, but measured in ages rather than years. Think about what this means. These were not simple people doing magic rituals. They were trying to save key information. They were leaving a warning for future civilizations, a message that says, "This happened before, it will happen again, and you need to be ready." But here is the truly scary part that the analysis revealed. If their math was correct, if the pattern they hid is real, then according to the timeline in the stone, we might be getting close to another turning point in that cosmic cycle soon. Now, before you brush this off, consider what else the computer discovered. The deliberate burying of Göbekli Tepe around 8000 BC was not just leaving it behind. The site was carefully filled in with thousands of tons of dirt and rocks. This was a huge job that would have required a massive team working together. The analysis of the fill layers shows they were placed carefully, preserving the structures perfectly. This was not destruction, it was protection. Why would you bury something you spent centuries building unless you knew you could not keep it safe? Unless you knew your culture was falling apart, your knowledge slipping away, and you wanted to save the most important message you had for whoever came next. The computer detected something else in its analysis that the teams are still trying to understand. When it looked at the skill level across the site's long history, they found that the best techniques appear first and then slowly disappear. The heat shock method, that precise cutting that should not be possible with stone tools, is most clear in the oldest quarries. Later sites show rougher methods, more pounding, less precision, as if the knowledge of how to do it right was being lost family by family. Several modern teams have tried to copy the Göbekli Tepe pillars using only tools available to ancient people. In 2017, a team of 6 expert stoneworkers in Germany worked full-time for 8 weeks to create just the basic shape of a half-size copy. The existence of 50-ton pillars adorned with complex narrative art implies a logistical operation requiring centuries of continuous, high-intensity labor. Yet the archaeological record presents a haunting void where a supporting civilization should be. When we gaze upon the monumental architecture of Göbekli Tepe, we are confronted by a paradox that defies the fundamental laws of social development as we understand them. There are no houses, no evidence of large-scale farms, and no granaries to feed the thousands of workers required to move these megaliths. There is only a site for ritual, standing in solitary grandeur. This absence of domestic debris is not merely a gap in the data. It is a deafening silence that suggests the standard model of history is fractured. Recent computer analysis of the carvings has deepened this mystery, revealing a level of sophistication that is technically impossible for the era in question. The specific technique utilized is known as undercut relief, a method where stone is removed from behind a figure to create a three-dimensional effect that stands away from the background. Even for modern master carvers utilizing high-carbon steel chisels, this is a high-risk process where a single errant strike can shatter the artwork and ruin the piece. To attempt this with flint tools on limestone is an endeavor of unimaginable difficulty. Yet at Göbekli Tepe, these delicate, high-relief figures are flawless. There are no practice marks, no discarded failures, and no evidence of the learning curve that characterizes human artistic evolution. Furthermore, advanced 3D scanning technology has exposed an even more unsettling anomaly: the absence of stop-start lines. In traditional stone carving, microscopic ridges reveal where a sculptor paused to rest, sharpen tools, or reassess their work. The analysis of these pillars, however, implies that complex 3D figures were carved in single, non-stop sessions. This indicates a level of mental focus and physical stability that rivals, or perhaps exceeds, the capabilities of modern masters. The distinct lack of a support settlement leads to a conclusion that is difficult to reconcile with the hunter-gatherer narrative. These pillars were likely carved by visitors who arrived with a complete, fully formed skill set, executed their magnum opus with impossible precision, and then vanished into the landscape. This accumulation of impossibilities leads us inevitably toward a theory that has the potential to end academic careers and rewrite the textbooks. We must consider the possibility that Göbekli Tepe was not built by the simple nomadic hunter-gatherers whose flint tools litter the surface of the region. The evidence suggests the site was constructed by an earlier, significantly smarter culture, and was only later inherited by a less advanced people who eventually buried it. This inheritance theory explains the baffling reverse evolution observed at the site, where the oldest pillars, those in the deepest circles, are the most massive and sophisticated, while the newer rings are smaller, rougher, and less technically sound. We are witnessing the entropy of skill, a civilization forgetting its own capabilities, or a less advanced group trying to mimic the works of gods they no longer understood. The implications extend beyond a single site. The discovery of sister sites like Karahan Tepe, where statues are carved directly into the bedrock, reveals a regional network that operated with high-level coordination. These were not isolated tribes stumbling into greatness. This was a specialized society. Evidence of bead factories in one location and stone carving hubs in another proves that a complex division of labor existed long before the invention of farming. This shatters the foundational dogma of anthropology, which dictates that agriculture creates the surplus necessary for complex society. Göbekli Tepe proves that complexity, ritual, and specialized knowledge came first. Consequently, we may not be looking at the birth of civilization, but rather the last light of a previous one. The builders appear to be survivors of a cataclysm, possessing a knowledge of star cycles, geometry, and engineering that simply should not exist in the Stone Age. Their actions speak of desperation and foresight. They did not merely close these temples when they were done, they buried them. This was an act of immense effort, requiring as much labor as the construction itself. They were sealing these structures as time capsules, protecting the intricate reliefs from the erosion of wind and rain to ensure their message survived the intervening millennia. AI analysis has now begun to decode the star alignments and tool marks, revealing a narrative that challenges our understanding of the human timeline. The builders were recording a terrible past event, a shift in the world that nearly wiped them out, and hiding warnings about repeating celestial cycles. They were waiting for a future civilization advanced enough to excavate the site and technologically capable enough to decode the data. That civilization is us. The stones are not silent relics of a primitive past. They are screaming a horrifying truth across the abyss of time. We are looking at the desperate legacy of a superior humanity, a warning beacon lit by a dying light, trying to reach us before their knowledge was lost to the dark forever. Do you believe we are the first advanced civilization, or merely the latest to rise? If this challenges your worldview, please like and subscribe for more deep dives into lost history.